Frenchie's Art Gallery, located on historic Oak Street beside the Maple Leaf Bar. With over 3,000 square feet of space, it features a large gallery front room and Frenchie's personal art studio. Frenchie's Art Gallery is also connected to the Maple Leaf Courtyard, which is ideal for the New Orleans night scene. Frenchie's Art Gallery, 8314 Oak Street. Yeah, you're right.
Located at 109 Wall Boulevard in Gretna, Uniforms by Logo Express provides school uniforms, medical wear, hospitality wear, safety and industrial wear, and so much more. We offer a number of locations on both sides of the river. 2 in Chantilly, 1 in Woodmere, and our main store located in Gretna. Uniforms by Logo Express. Your brand starts here.
The owners of the Delachey's Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachet, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachet, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to a special edition of Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and we have a great show for you. Hey, for a weekend that was devoid mostly of local football, well, it was certainly eventful. Congrats to Nichols and Southeastern for their big victories this weekend. But the big three that we usually cover here, you know the names, the Saints, LSU, and Tulane. Well, they were all off this weekend for only the 4th time in the last 50 years since the Saints started in 1967. Hey, it happened in 1999 and 2002, where all 3 teams had bye weeks at the same time. And, of course, the weekend following 9/11, when every team across America, well, they took the weekend off. This weekend, however, it was Hurricane Matthew that forced the postponement of both the LSU and Tulane games, which were slated to be played in Gainesville and Orlando, Florida, respectively. Hey, Tulane's game with Central Florida, hey, that was easily rescheduled. That was a Friday night game. They knew the hurricane was going through. They rescheduled that because both teams share the same bye week later in the season. Easy said than done, right? Done. Well, the Florida Gator LSU game, on the other hand, well, that became a bit of a fiasco. Let me stress this. Safety, of course, is the most important factor when it comes to playing any game, because it is just a game. But whether we like it or not, college football is big business. And athletic director from Florida, Jeremy Foley, well, if you ask me, he played the role of Machiavelli perfectly to a T. Hey, Foley, who is recently retired, was the architect of 2 national titles for both the Gators football teams and 2 more for the Gator basketball program. The guy is a great athletic director. But here's the situation. You see, Florida has an injured quarterback and a banged-up defense right now. The defense is their calling card. And you know what? If they could somehow get out of a game against the toughest opponent left on their schedule, well, LSU, then the road to the SEC championship just got a whole lot easier. Conspiracy theory? I thought so at first, but after closer observation, it became obvious to me that Foley played LSU athletic director Joe Oliva and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey perfectly in waiting until mid-afternoon on Thursday to postpone the game after promising all week that they would definitely play on Saturday. Hey, well played, Jeremy. As far as for the college football that was actually played this weekend, well, the SEC hosted a great top 10 matchup between Texas A&M and Tennessee and their star quarterbacks Trevor Knight and Joshua Dobbs. Hey, as usual, the Vols got down big in the contest. Isn't that what they do? They get down double digits and they come back and win. Well, and as usual, they made another incredible comeback. But for the first time this season, they fell short and lost the game. This time, it was in double overtime to the Aggies. Hey, Josh Dobbs was great, but Trevor Knight was even better. The Aggies quarterback, formerly from Oklahoma, hey, he put himself in the Heisman conversation with this game. I'm telling you right, that's how good he's been playing. The difference between this particular brand of A&M football and some of the others, well, is the presence of a great running back finally. They've had good running backs, but this guy, number 5, Travion Williams, and a stout John Chavis defense led by Myles Garrett, who, by the way, is a candidate to be the top pick in next year's NFL draft. And for the second time this season, A&M sent a highly touted quarterback named Josh home with a frown on his face. The first, well, you see him right there. UCLA's Josh Rosen came in to Kyle Field at A&M, and he got sent home as well back in early September. Hey, in another crazy battle, the rebuilt, renewed Miami Hurricanes and Florida State Seminoles. That's one of the greatest rivalries in college football. Well, it's been a little down lately because, well, quite frankly, Miami hasn't been very good. Well, they're 10th ranked before this game. They battled it out with their stars. I mean, Canes quarterback Brad Kaya, a future pro. And don't forget the running back duo they have. It's a two-headed monster, Mark Walton and Joseph Yearby. Well, they battled against Heisman Trophy candidate Dalvin Cook. And, of course, well, their coaches you probably know well. Jimbo Fisher, national championship coach, who was at LSU when they won a national championship as an assistant. And then Mark Richt, who won a couple SEC titles with the Georgia Bulldogs. Hey, the Canes in this game, they jumped out to an early 13-0 lead. And we're like, this team is for real. Well, the Noles, who got really bounced hard in their game against Louisville, and they have a couple tough losses right now that's unusual for them. Well, they came back strong in this game like they do. You see Dalvin Cook there with 20 unanswered points. They took the lead in the fourth quarter, and Miami showed some fight and tied the game back up with a minute or so to go. So they thought, but the Noles blocked the extra point. In a crazy thing, you never see extra points blocked. Certainly now in the pros, you shoot it for 33 yards. They kick from the regular 20 in the college, and what a tough way to lose. And they also ruined the Canes' hopes of any chance for an undefeated season. And after 7 one-point losses to Miami over the years, remember how many wide rights did we see? Well, the Noles finally have their first one-point victory ever over the Miami Hurricanes. Hey, another great weekend game we thought might be great was Bama, Arkansas. This was the year, after playing Bama tough 2 years in a row, that they thought, hey, maybe with the big hogs that they have, those big offensive linemen, and Brett Bielema as the coach, well, maybe this is the year they could take Alabama. They were home. But we forget, this is Alabama still. The Alabama Crimson Tide, the #1 team in the country. They don't rebuild, they reload. And I got to tell you, Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin, you see them arguing on the sidelines at times? Well, these two, he has brought a dimension to this Alabama team with this offense that's wide open to go along with their scary defenses. You can't predict Alabama just to run the ball. You see those receivers. That's Ardarius Stewart. They've got a guy also named Calvin Ridley. But that running game has found their running back. They always seem to have a Heisman Trophy candidate. This year it's Damian Harris. And I got to tell you, the quarterback play of true freshman Jalen Hurts has been nothing short of spectacular thus far. It looks like they got their guy for a long time to go. And I got to give it up to the Crimson Tide. They've been playing some great football. Other stuff going on, and I did talk about Calvin Ridley and Ardarius Stewart, but the Alabama defense is still their calling card. There's no doubt about it. That defense is the real deal. Hey, let's talk about the preseason Heisman candidates. Hey, you know the names. LSU had one. Last year, you know, LSU's Fournette kind of took over as the leader, and then he lost it to Derrick Henry late in the year. But these are the guys. You see Fournette. You see McCaffrey. You see Deshaun Watson. And you also have Dalvin Cook. These are the guys coming in. Well, let me say this. Dalvin Cook may have played himself back into the picture, as did Deshaun Watson. These guys started off very slow. Leonard Fournette's already missed 2 weekends of football, one with an injury, one with this hurricane situation. And he's pretty banged up, so most national pundits are calling him out of it. We'll see. But, hey, some other guys before the season, Nick Chubb. Well, he was coming back from a bad injury, but Nick Chubb had a great first game with 233 yards and a couple touchdowns. Well, he's done nothing since, and he's banged up. And we see other guys, J.T. Barrett from Ohio State. This guy does nothing but win football games. And, you know, remember the whole deal he had with Braxton Miller and sharing time with Cordell Jones. Well, it's his job again, and they are #2 in the country. Hey, don't forget Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma. They were in the Final Four last year. He is a gunslinger like Brett Favre without the strong arm. Baker Mayfield already has 2 losses, and that doesn't look good for his chances, but I love watching that guy play. They had a couple dark horses, one right here in the SEC, and Chad Kelly. Early in the year, they said, you know what, this guy, Jim Kelly's nephew, he could put up some big numbers, and he has done so. He's kind of toward the back. And Greg Ward, right down I-10 for the University of Houston, really propelled himself early into the race when they beat Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield in the first game of the season. Well, the loss to Navy will not help him. But we all know who the heavy favorite is. If you follow college football, there's no doubt about it. It's only one guy. His name is Lamar Jackson. He came on strong at 15 touchdowns in the first 2 games, and they were all in the first half. That's remarkable, and he's done nothing to slow it down. You see what an acrobat he is, and he is a phenomenal, phenomenal athlete, and one of the very few guys that I would say, I will pay money to go watch you play. That's how good you are. Hey, we got a dark horse. It's Jabril Peppers from Michigan. He's a guy. Don't forget, Charles Woodson was a DB who won it over Peyton Manning years ago. Maybe it will be Jabril Peppers. How about the baseball playoffs? They've started, and they're already almost to the championship series because the Blue Jays are going to be in the ALCS. They swept the Rangers. And remember last spring when Bautista got knocked out right there by Rougned Odor? Well, Bautista got the last laugh. He hit a home run, and then you see Odor is now pouting on the side, and he is out of the playoff like the rest of the Texas Rangers. And the other baseball playoffs, I mean, you have the other ones going on right now. You have Cleveland, the Indians. Well, they just swept last night in an exciting game. They ended up taking it. The Red Sox had many chances in the last inning, in the 9th inning, to tie the game or go ahead. They couldn't get it done, and they sent one of the greatest players in Red Sox history home, Big Papi, David Ortiz, in his final game. And he's considered, along with Ted Williams and, of course, Carl Yastrzemski, as 3 of the greatest Red Sox ever. Hey, the Nationals, they beat the Dodgers to go up 2-1 in that series, but the game of the night was last night late. It ended at 1:30 in the morning. The Giants and Cubs. Hey, Bumgarner has never given up a home run in his career to a pitcher ever. Well, he gave up one last night in the 2nd inning, 3-0 to the pitcher, Jake Arrieta, who's an amazing pitcher himself. And I got to give the Giants credit. They were down 3-0, but they fought, clawed, and got back in the game. They've got up 5-3. Well, the Cubs came back and scored 2 in the 9th to make it 5-5. It went 4 more innings until they got the big win. Joe Panik hit the game-winning hit, and the Giants, in an even-numbered year, we know what happens, 2010, 2012, 2014, the San Francisco Giants have won the World Series. Can they get the magic again? They have to beat the Cubs in 2 more. It's going to be interesting to see. Hey, I've got a big show for you. We're going to talk about the NFL. We're going to talk about LSU. We're going to talk about all things under the sun because I've got Eric Hill, superstar linebacker with LSU back in the 80s, 3-time All-SEC player. Great LSU teams back then. He's going to talk about LSU today, talk about the great LSU lineage and his career there. I've also got Christian Garrett from WWL Radio. He's going to come on and talk Saints and figure it out. We're going to see what this team can do in the future. And also, my old friend who was a co-host with me on ESPN Radio on Fridays, well, his name is Chase Brocato. I call him the young gun. He's going to talk about college football, pro football. We might even try to squeeze a little Pelicans in. Hey, it's going to be a big show. You're watching Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander. Stay tuned.
Wednesdays at 11 p.m. on LAE.
Welcome back, Crescent City. I told you this was going to be a big show, like it pretty much is every week, but this one's a little more special for me because my first guest was a contemporary of mine. Even though he looks like he's in much better shape, he was at LSU at the very same time that I was there, so I got to witness the great seasons LSU had back then. Hey, they say this is the glory era. Well, there are 3 or 4 seasons in the 80s that I'll put up with these anytime. No national championships, but a couple SEC titles, and then a tie for a third. My next guest was the highest drafted linebacker out of LSU ever, and one of the highest picks ever. He was the 10th pick back in 1989. He played from 85 to 88 with guys like Dalton Hilliard, Eric Martin. Then it was Tommy Hodson, and the list goes on. Fellow linebackers, he had Michael Brooks, Toby Casson. but he was one of the centerpieces. His name is Eric Hill. You may know him through great business he does here in the New Orleans area. He's also part of TAF, the Tiger Athletic Fund. And he's a man about town. Good to see you, man.
How's it going, my man?
Eric Hill, look at Eric Hill, man. This guy could still play. There's no doubt about it, but welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a thrill for me. I mean, we're about the same age. I'm a couple years older than you, but I remember the days when you were a student at LSU.
Yeah,
I was bartending at Fred's, and you guys were going to Sports Illustrated and Fred's and having a good time.
That's right, man. That was those are the glory days. So, you know, getting a little older now. You know, I'll be 50 this year, so it's kind of funny because now you start to reflect. You know, you have kids growing up, getting close to that college age, so now you start to reflect and think about those things.
Well, I want to say this first. You went to LSU, but I don't know, you from Arkansas originally?
Well, you know, I was born in Arkansas, but I was raised in Galveston, Texas.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I knew a story because I remember I followed recruiting even back then that, that you were considering Oklahoma.
Yes.
And that was a big deal. In Oklahoma, obviously, Barry Switzer.
That's
In fact, I work with a guy every weekend named Spencer Tillman, who was the running back on that team. But tell people the story about, because I thought you were going to Oklahoma for a while. Tell people the story how you ended up at LSU instead of OU.
You know, it was a done deal. I mean, I went to OU, and like I said, Barry Switzer is a salesman. He can sell anyone. And you know, went there, and even through the snow. It snowed on my recruiting visit, and being, you know, a little boy from Galveston, you know, never seen snow before. So, but, you know, my high school head coach, who to this day, he and I still talk, you know, a couple times a month, and he's probably one of the bigger influences in my life as a male. And, you know, he's a man of integrity. If you give your word, you got to stick behind it. He was a POW in Nam in the Vietnam War, and you know, Green Beret, a guy named Ted Umberhagen. And Ted said, "Well, son, you told Coach Arnsberg you was going to visit, you know, his program." He said,
Bill Arnsberger, obviously the LSU coach.
And he said, "Hey, if you want to go to Oklahoma, that's fine." He said, "That's your decision, but you told Coach Arnsberger you're going to visit his campus and you're going to get, you know, go on an official visit." He said, "So you need to live up to what you said." And I'm like, "Well, Coach, I've already made up my mind." And he's like, "Son," he said, "have some integrity." So, you know, unwillingly, grudgingly, I got on the plane, went to LSU, and let me tell you, they must knew they had one shot at me.
They got one shot. They're going to do it well. So what did they throw at you?
You know,
I mean, that you can say on air.
You know, it was just, to be honest, man, it was just the vibe. It was just the feel. You know, it started off, you know, went to, you know, football ops. Back then, it was at the stadium. Right. You know, and so, you know, went there, met all the coaching staff. Coach Nader, who's still, you know, the only, you know, he's the only guy still around. Only guy still there. And met with Coach Nader, and you know, like I said, coaching staff and a lot of people that's tied to the program. And then they had a, you know, basketball game next door. And went to the basketball.
And they were really good back then.
Yeah, went to the basketball game, and you know, at halftime, you know, they welcomed me.
Oh yeah, they're chanting your name. I was probably in that crowd because
they pulled out a few stops, but really more than anything, man, it was, you know, it just felt good, you know. It just felt good. And
any regrets?
No, not at all. I tell people all the time, man, you know, and you know, just over time, young kids, guys I played with in the NFL, and I say, man, you know, my best 4 years consecutive was my 4 years at LSU.
Isn't it the truth, man?
You know,
Isn't it the truth?
Because, you know, I've met so many people that had horrible college experience, and I said, man, I didn't have that. You know, I didn't have that. I say, man, my 4 years at LSU were just, I mean, you know, we couldn't do anything wrong.
I got to be honest with you. I just dropped my son off as a freshman at LSU, and I'm like, I really wish I could stay with you, son. I mean, I was looking around. Not much has changed. Friends are still popping. Football's still great.
That's right.
You had some great times. By the way, 3-time All-SEC player. And by the way, let me say this. Was the Boz at Oklahoma yet? Or
he was. No, the Boz.
So you would have been a linebacker with the Boz.
You know, and again, as a 17-year-old kid, you know, Oklahoma recruited very big out of Texas. Sure. So the starting defense at Oklahoma all were from Texas.
Yeah, they love taking the players with the Longhorns,
So anyway, so that was kind of the pitch, and I'm like, I'll fit right in. But let me tell you, you know, I came to LSU, and you had guys like Michael Brooks. You know,
Can I say my favorite quote? Michael Brooks, I said it to you earlier, and I used this for a long time. I said, nobody my age can block me. I'll never forget that quote. But Michael Brooks, Toby Caston, your linebacking group was just as good as Oklahoma.
Sean Burks. I mean, man, we had some guys, and you know, and Mike to this day, you know, a lot of the, you know, guys, myself, you know, we'll talk about, you know, Ron Sancho.
Golly, that's a big group, man.
What's linebacker played in Brady James.
Brady James from West
I was
Monroe,
with Brady
right,
this past weekend,
yeah.
and we all talk about, okay, who's the best linebackers at LSU, and and the one thing that we all agree on is Michael Brooks was probably number one.
I'm not sure I completely agree. I loved him, but you were picked a couple rounds ahead of Michael Brooks.
Well, you know what? Mike got hurt his senior year.
Right.
Mike got hurt his senior year.
That's
still
true.
got drafted in the 3rd round and only played one game his senior year. And still got drafted with a bad knee.
It's funny you bring up Brady James, though, because in the late 90s, we flew him to Atlanta from West Monroe to be on this big national recruiting show we had. I love Brady James.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about this LSU squad,
Let's do it.
So many memorable games.
Right.
There was 2 that came out to me. What are some for you? I mean, what's the first one that comes out in your mind?
Obviously one of the bigger games, and it was, we had quite a few. I mean, we had fights with Florida, Alabama, I mean, just big games. But, the Ohio State game.
Day game, CBS, both top 5, right?
Yeah, and, 2 undefeated teams.
1987.
And it just all started that week. I mean, apparently, Harvey Williams was having his press conference, and everybody was telling him about Chris Spielman. And Harvey said, Chris Spielman, he said, man, I play against better every day in practice.
What? That's Harvey, boy, from Hempstead, Texas.
And so that kind of set the stage. And then, of course, when the game came around, Brent Musburger, CBS, and the visiting team's supposed to come out, then the home team come out. Well, they refused to come out. So the network, I think we were delayed like 2-3 minutes. And I think
it was stirring the crowd up.
They got us all together. They got them and decided, hey, y'all need to walk out at the same time.
Wow.
And so that kind of rolled over into, at the coin toss, we get out center of the field, you got Eric Andelsek and you got Chris Spielman, and apparently, that was some war words, and man, it almost fell apart out there.
Well, how crazy. There's a picture. You can't see it, but behind you, 76 is Andelsek.
Right.
Obviously, Spielman was the best linebacker in the country. They brawled before the game.
Oh, yeah.
What were y'all thinking when this happened?
Oh, that just set the tone, man. We were ready. We were ready. And let me tell you, that was a very physical ball game. And it went down the way it started, in a tie.
And ironically, Andelsek and Spielman end up being roommates. But you're right. What is it when you get in a big game like that, 2 top 5 teams, and you tie at the end of it?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no ties anymore. I bet you wish they had overtime back then. What's the feeling like when you go in the locker room and they say it's like kissing your sister? I don't bring that. But the point is is there any fulfillment in that?
Not really, because we were in Tiger Stadium, so we felt we had the advantage. You know what I mean? But, give it to them. They came on the road. They played a great game, played a physical game, and it ended the way it did. And but it's something to talk about. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And things happen in that game you don't forget.
Well, your senior year there was another one, the earthquake game.
Right.
And I got to be honest with you, I was the only time ever that I'd already graduated, so I came back and my tickets downloaded, didn't come through. So I ended up for the only time upstairs in the upper deck.
Right.
And that's not the game to be at because it was shaking and moving. I was in the middle of Auburn people, but it was the most boring game ever. It was 3-0 until the very end, and Auburn got a field goal to make it 6-0.
Yeah.
And we're like, there's no way LSU can win this. They haven't done anything all game. Auburn's ranked 4th in the country. People forget that.
Right.
LSU comes down, converts a few 4th down plays, and then that big pass you just saw in the picture to Hodson to Eddie Fuller.
Yeah.
Please describe those moments in that last drive. You're on the sideline watching your offense try to score.
Well, let me correct you just a little bit.
All right.
To us, that wasn't a boring game.
There was a lot of hits.
Let me tell you, that was the most physical game that I've ever been involved in my college career.
Wow.
And I talked to guys that I played with. I was just talking to Ronnie Halliburton here recently. I said, man, tell me. He said, man, that earthquake game. And I went back and saw it. I said, man, that was some hitting. But you're right. I mean, it was a grind the whole game.
I apologize for saying that because I get on people for saying that the 9-6 LSU game in 2011 what people say was boring, and I was riveted on every play. I think my problem was I was so far up, and I was in the middle of all Auburn folks.
Right.
And I'm just like, this is awful. They're just razzing me the whole game. But you're right. And then the end of it, everybody remembers the seismic. We just saw the earthquake, obviously the seismograph that went off.
And then we had like 3 tries at it. Finally got it right at the end, you know?
And it 4th down, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's the last play, and Eddie Fuller pulls it in. Any other great memorable games during your time there? I mean, that just stand out. Alabama, 1918.
Alabama, man. I mean, You know, I remember we played. We were in Alabama. I think it was my senior year. We played them Jack Denny Stadium.
Right.
Was it? Or
Bryant
did we
Denny?
play in Birmingham back then? I forgot. But we had just taken the lead, and they needed a field goal to win.
Right.
They needed a field goal to win, and you had Derek Thomas, who was on the outside. You know,
One of the greatest linebackers
Yeah, exactly.
ever.
And DT was he was all that, and so and I was the wing back on the field goal team. So basically, I had to block him.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, Derek was cat quick. And I was like, you know, but he wasn't a very big guy, you know, and I'm a pretty big guy. I said, oh, I'm going to get him, you know. Man, let me tell you, he got around that corner so quick. I don't know how he didn't block the kick. It just went straight through his arm. No, we were kicking. That's what we were kicking.
Yeah,
the field
David
goal.
Brown.
We were kicking the field goal to go
Oh,
ahead.
I remember you talking about it. The ball went right through his hands, right between his hands.
And I'm like,
how did he not get blocked?
I never got a hand on a guy.
Wow.
That's how good he was.
He was great. He was great. He obviously died tragically,
Right.
as did three of your teammates, which is sad. I don't want to make this a downer, but we mentioned Andelsek. All were involving cars. Two were driving. I think Ralph Norwood and Toby Caston, great players. One was an offensive lineman. Would have been a top 5 pick, I think, had he not been injured. Still was, I believe, a late first or early second round pick.
Ralph.
Toby Caston, long career. And then, of course, Eric Andelsek. I mean, your former teammate, y'all must talk about that.
Oh,
when
yeah,
you get together.
without a doubt. I mean, you know, Big E, like I said, it was 3 guys. It was 2 guys that I had to know. I had to know all the time where they were on the football field. That was Eric Andelsek and Ralph Norwood.
Wow.
So Eric being a guard, he pulled a lot. So I had to know where he was, because if he pulled, you had to be ready. I mean, Eric, he will break your shoulder pads. He
was the biggest muscular dude I've ever seen up close. I mean, pre-steroids, I was like, this dude is jacked.
Eric was an offensive lineman with probably about 8-9% body fat, which was unheard of back then. I mean, he was built built like Fred Flintstone. You know what I mean? He was a throwback, man. But, you know, great player, big Ralph Norwood.
Yeah.
You know, obviously he and I had battles every day in practice. I mean, people thought we hated each other.
Right.
I mean, we stepped on the field. It was no friendship every day.
Battle it, man.
And, you know, and of course, you know, Toby, great linebacker, man. You know, but obviously when we get together, you know, reunions or whatever, those guys come up in the stories, and you always hear a different story. So, those guys, their memories will never go away.
I do have a question for you, because you play in practice every day against some of the most storied players in LSU history to me.
Right.
A couple of them played for the Saints. Actually, 3 of them. One was a little less, Tommy Hodson. But the other 2, Eric Martin and Dalton Hilliard. I know you were a freshman, and I think they might have left after that. But you had to go up against those dudes in practice. What was that like? There's Dalton Hilliard in the picture.
Well, you know, Dalton, man, Dalton was the easiest guy. You know, now Garrett James was a handful.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't touch him. You know, you couldn't do nothing with it.
He was a prima donna.
He was. And Dalton, you know, hey, he'll tell you good hit. He'll help you, tell you what you're doing wrong. I mean, to this day, you know, Dalton is about the most soft-spoken guy. But you know, he was that guy. You know, Eric, you know, just a class guy, man. Eric just kind of real methodical, gets it done. You know, big body. They called him slow. They called him this. But what he did, caught everything that came.
7th round pick and still one of the top 2 or 3.
Caught everything that came in his area. So, great guys, man. Great guys to be involved with.
I got to talk about your pro career, because I think because you played out west, people don't remember. But let me remind you, the 10th pick of the draft in 1989, the year after senior year, 12 years in the league, 9 with the Cardinals. A great career. Talk about the NFL, getting drafted by the Cardinals. You played a couple in San Diego at the end, one with the Rams. But talk about your NFL career and what you remember most about it.
You know, it was, you know, like you said, you know, going out to the West, and the team had just moved from St. Louis.
Y'all were even called the Phoenix Cardinals.
Yeah, we're the Phoenix Cardinals. Yeah, they didn't change it until 90. Well, Buddy Ryan got there in 94. We went to the Arizona Cardinals. So, but, you know, and again, you know, TV wasn't what it is today. You know, so in the West, I think we got lost out there. And then also, too, we wasn't a very good football team. You know, we had some very, very lean years. Especially,
but it got a little better in 93, right?
It got better. Like I said, I mean, when Gene Stallings drafted me in '89, they ended up firing Gene, and Joe Bugle came from the Washington Redskins. You know, he coached
Ball of energy, man.
He coached the Hogs, and let me tell you, tough guy to play for.
Well, I lived in D.C. when he was coaching with Washington.
I mean, people always ask me, man, who's the toughest? Man, Buddy Ryan had to be tough. I said, man, let me tell you, Joe Bugle was the toughest coach I ever had. because he coached every position like he coached the offensive line. We were a tough team, we were a physical team, and we were in shape. I mean, Joe Bugle, he demanded the most out of you. And like I said, when we showed up physically, people wasn't going to out-hit us. They may out-schemed us.
Absolutely.
You know, but they wasn't going to out-hit us. And I tell you, we turned that thing around, and in '93, we were a very good football team. We were coming around because, you know, through the draft and some free agents or whatever, we put together a pretty good team. And, you know, the club just decided to go a different way in '94. And I told the organization at that time, because I was really pushing for them to keep Joe Bugle, I said, man, I think he needs one more year. He needs one more year because we're right there, and they didn't give it to him.
Well, you had to chase a guy named Emmitt Smith pretty much your entire career.
Yeah,
you had a tough division.
College and pros.
The Redskins, and you had, obviously, the Giants, and then the Cowboys. And they were all winning Super Bowls in your time, but that's the all-time leading rusher in the picture.
Right.
You're chasing him. You did a lot of that, right, because everybody else did.
You know, Emmitt was my nemesis from LSU to Arizona. And, you know, guy had a great career, and Emmitt and I, you know, to this day, still good buddies. And that's it's always cool to, you know, to talk about some of those war stories, because let me tell you, playing the Cowboys was like a homecoming for me, because being a Texas kid, that was a big deal when I went to Cowboy Stadium.
One last thing, you played with a New Orleans guy who was a Hall of Famer,
right.
And a great guy from all accounts. What was it like playing with Aeneas Williams, who was recently inducted to the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, you know, let me tell you, Aeneas, he raised the bar for all of us. He was that guy that he made you think about something all the time. When he was on the sideline, you know, when offense was on the field and the defense was on the sideline, he was doing a ball drill, he was doing a scoop and score drill, he was doing you know,
always working.
Always working.
Right.
And he raised the bar for all of us. And you know, so it wasn't a mystery what, you know, he being inducted to the Hall of Fame. You just knew he was that guy. You know, you see greatness when you see it,
right.
It stands out.
You know it immediately.
Yeah.
Well, I see greatness right here, and I can't thank you enough. This has been an honor for me.
I appreciate it, my man.
We got a couple things for you. A nice restaurant here in town.
Okay.
We got that. They're about to have 4 locations. They got one in the Warehouse District, one over there in Metairie. And here's a great thing. I got 4 workouts for you for this place called Orange.
All right.
Can't say the rest of it, but it's Orange, and it's right there in Midtown, so enjoy that, and I appreciate you coming. And we have a tradition. We'll get you to sign this ball, and I've been looking for my pen, so we're going to have to do it right after. But thank you so much.
All right,
Eric Hill, 3-time All-SEC player, top pick in the draft, and one all-around great guy, and a great businessman. He makes us proud down here in New Orleans and, of course, the Baton Rouge community as well. Hey, we're not done yet. I've got a couple more guests. We have Christian Garrett coming later. He's from WWL Radio. We're going to talk Saints, what they need to do to continue to try to get this thing right. And next, we're going to have Chase Brocato, who used to co-host my ESPN radio show with me on Fridays when I used to do it at Deuce McAllister's restaurant. He's going to come and talk some college football. We're going to talk a little Heisman and some pros as well. That's coming up next right here on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned.
The mark of Legacy Kitchen is simple. We offer numerous dishes like chicken enchilada soup, prime filet and loaded baked potato, baby back ribs, and so much more. At Legacy Kitchen, we serve American fare, crafted cocktails, and we offer great selection of wines by the glass. Metairie at Betts and Martin Berman, and in the Warehouse District at Chapatulas and Girard.
I burned for health.
For never being big again.
I burned for my family.
For my 10th high school reunion.
For swimsuit season. I burned for myself.
Orange Theory Fitness. Keep burning.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934. It is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans. Welcome back, Crescent City, and I can't tell you What a treat that was for me, and hopefully for you as well, to have Eric Hill, one of the great Tigers of all time. When you're three-time All-SEC, that's nothing to sneeze at. Hey, the 80s, particularly mid-80s towards the end of the 80s, well, that was a glory era for LSU. Nothing like 2 national championships, but it was a great run. Hey, sometimes you have guests because they are Eric Hill, and sometimes you have guests because you enjoy talking sports with them, football, basketball, any sport, and that's the case for my next 2 guests. I'm going to have Christian Garrett from WLAE Radio coming up next, but right now, well, it's my former co-host on Fridays when I was at Deuce McAllister's place. His name is Chase Brocato, and he's a young gun. I always enjoy talking sports with him, so I thought I'd bring him back. We're about a third of the way through the college football season, and none better to talk to you. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well, Scott. Thank you for having me on again, and anytime you want to have me on, then guess what? I'm always here for you.
Let's do it. Hey, by the way, I did have you on right before the NBA draft. You and Andrew Alexander had a segment together. It was a lot of fun talking basketball. We're going to switch gears because it's football season. We'll talk a little Pels, but let's get into what's happening right now. Alabama, your alma mater. They don't rebuild, they reload. I mean, how many players on this Alabama defense, they lose the NFL, yet they're back and they're #1 again. And I don't think anybody's complaining about it because they are doing it and doing it decisively.
Yeah, Scott, and the craziest thing about this year that I've noticed is they're really plugging in players that have no experience coming in. But Nick Saban, like you said, coaching in college football, I think, really propels players where they haven't been on the field the year before. They could take that next step if you have someone like Nick Saban telling you what to do. And like you said, it's a process at Alabama. These kids come to know that they want to play in the NFL.
Well, we just saw a picture, obviously national champions. I said this before. This guy right here was at Alabama 3 years out of the 4 he was there. You won national titles. You must miss that, although you got another one last year. But the difference between this Bama team is the picture we saw, Lane Kiffin sitting in there with Nick Saban in that pick. Lane Kiffin's brought something a little unique to Alabama, and that's a wide-open offense.
Yeah, Scott, you said it best. I think he's putting players that are athletes coming into Alabama. They might not be wide receivers coming out of high school, but hey, you put them in the right position and they can make plays, and you're seeing it. And Nick Saban, for the first time in his coaching career, is trusting a true freshman. I think that shows you enough that he's got a lot of confidence in Lane Kiffin.
And it's got to help recruiting. Not that Alabama needs it, but when a true freshman's playing for a Nick Saban team, forget the history, forget the tradition, forget the recent national champions. They know they have a chance to play right away, and I know Les Miles had a little of that going when he was at LSU, but now a true freshman quarterback, that speaks volumes for recruits coming in.
It really does, and it shows players, Scott, that, hey, if you do go to Alabama, you're not going to be the only 5-star, but guess what? The competition you're going to get just in camp, it's going to prepare you for, if you go to the NFL, you're going to be coming in to the NFL. You might not be a high draft pick, but guess what? You went against the best players in college so that you'll be ready for the next level.
All right, I like to pride ourselves on, we talk Louisiana sports here. I love the Saints, Pelicans, LSU, Tulane, all of it. But I like to think that we talk about all of college football, all of the NBA, all of the NFL, and we're going to do that here because there's a big SEC matchup. Last week, I talked about in the open, it was Texas A&M and Tennessee. Once again, Tennessee fell way behind, and once again, they came back. They fell short this time in double overtime, but this kid, Joshua Dobbs, has got a home game against the Alabama Crimson Tide. And Alabama's been beating the brakes off this team for quite a few years now, but this is a storied history matchup. They've played this game for years. Does Tennessee have a chance in Neyland Stadium to get this done?
Yeah, Scott, the way this season has already gone for Tennessee, you can't say they don't have a chance in this game. And what scares people as Alabama fans, I would say, is that this game, Tennessee is playing with house money. I mean, no one's giving them a chance. It's a double-digit spread by the people in Vegas. And so no one's really giving Tennessee a chance, but crazy things have happened in that stadium already this year. And I think Nick Saban, if he doesn't get the guys up ready for the game, then guess what? It could easily be an upset.
I want your opinion on this because this is interesting. Obviously, with the loss last week to A&M, and obviously Bama's favored in this game, if Tennessee loses, that means the best they can do is 6-2 in conference. And we've already said the uncertainty of the LSU-Florida game being replayed. They beat Florida for the first time, and it seems like decades, but I know it's been several years. I think it was 11 maybe. And now they might not go because Florida could be 6-1, not having played the LSU game. What do you think? Is this fair? What do you think about this situation?
Yeah, this is a really odd situation. I think that the SEC should try and make up LSU-Florida just because the rivalry and just to see what happens between those two teams. Because either way, both those teams still have a chance to be in Atlanta, so I think that they should have to play those games. But Tennessee knows this is their last chance. You have Alabama coming to your house, CBS, big-time game, and you have to put your mouth where the football is.
I mean, listen, honestly, you probably read Machiavelli, The Prince, and all that. I think Jeremy Foley played it perfectly. He knew he had an injured quarterback. He knew his great defense is very banged up. And he kept saying on Tuesday and Wednesday, we're definitely playing the game no matter what. Well, he didn't want to move it to Tiger Stadium. I don't blame him for that. But you know what? On Thursday, all of a sudden, no game, and he doesn't have to play it. And then all of a sudden, Gainesville's beautiful on Saturday, beautiful on Sunday. We couldn't have predicted that, but Georgia played on Sunday. You would have thought Tennessee, LSU and Florida could have done the same. What do you think about Foley, and what do you think his motives were?
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you on Scott. I think that he came into the game. He saw what Coach O brought to LSU and the fire that they were playing with. I mean, they're one of the hottest teams right now coming off the Missouri game. You could have said that this week going into college football. He saw that. He had 4 defensive linemen, like you said, out. So guess what? Darius Geis, he might have had a huge game, and Florida feels like they weren't in the position to win.
I know you're a Bama guy, but I do appreciate that. I believe you're very unbiased. Real quick, give me. Do you think Tennessee will win, or do you think Bama's going to take it?
I do think it's going to be a close game in the first half, but I just think, Scott, like you saw in the Arkansas game, Alabama has 6 guys that they can bring in to pass rush, and Ryan Anderson's not even a name most people know about. He's leading the team in sacks. I mean, it just shows you.
And not Rhino, the one that used to play for the Pelicans. I mean, you guys just bring them in every single year. You get guys in the first, second round, no problem. We'll bring new guys in. All right, let's move forward. There's another big top 10 matchup. This one, well, you got the number 2 team, Ohio State, playing a team LSU fans should know well, Wisconsin. And if we're talking non-SEC stadiums, I've been to Camp Randall at least a dozen times. It's my favorite place to go out of the SEC. It's wild. And I remember being there back in the early 2000s when Wisconsin beat that Ohio State team that had like a 25-game win streak, and it was raucous. Can Wisconsin pull off the upset again against the number 2 ranked Buckeyes?
See, Scott, I think this is one of those games that it matches up on paper great for Wisconsin, but when you get on that field, Ohio State, the athletes they have, I mean, they can compete with any team in the SEC. JT Barrett's playing at a very high level, and I think that Wisconsin is just too one-dimensional with Corey Clement. They really have no quarterback play. They rely on a tough defense, but I think with the athletes Ohio State has, I just see it's hard for Wisconsin to be able to keep up.
I'm going to say this, though, because sometimes you have to throw a little out of the window, because that Ohio State team I saw a dozen years ago was way better than Wisconsin. I'm telling you, this atmosphere would make SEC. I mean, I've been to Ohio State, I've been to Michigan. Those are supposed to be great. Nothing compared to Wisconsin. They belong down here, like LSU, Alabama, Georgia, all these great atmospheres, Auburn, et cetera. Hey, speaking of, you mentioned Corey Clement, you mentioned JT Barrett. I mean, JT Barrett is a Heisman candidate. Obviously, he's a quarterback that had to deal with, Braxton Miller originally, and then he obviously had Cordell Jones' situation when he got hurt, and he became 3rd string after starting and having a great year. What do you think his Heisman chances are compared to guys like the front runner Lamar Jackson? But keep this in mind. No one that has led the Heisman race in September rarely wins it at the end. Last year, Leonard Fournette was hands down the winner, and then Derrick Henry blew him away. Can a guy like JT Barrett sneak in through, especially if Louisville loses another game to, say, Houston?
Yeah, Scott, JT Barrett was actually my pick preseason to win the Heisman just because I thought the schedule they had, he could really pad his stats, which he has against teams that he should be able to. But I think the Michigan-Ohio State game, I really both think they will be undefeated when they see each other. And if he has one of those performances like he did last year against them, and he's going to be in the horseshoe at home, I think he could take home that hardware because, as anyone, Scott, you have to have your team.
Big wins.
You have to have the big win and your team be in the college football playoff to really elevate yourself as a Heisman frontrunner.
You see him, the stiff arm right there on the helmet. He hopes to do that again. They have their own Heisman candidate in Jabril Peppers, although he's a defensive guy. He is a stud, and they do have history with Charles Woodson winning it. But as far as other candidates, listen, early in the season, we knew it was Deshaun Watson coming. He was a runner-up last year. Leonard Fournette, everybody figured he'd be the guy. But this kid that just came on, and literally his first 2 games, he had 15 touchdowns in the first half alone in 2 games. And then he's proven on the big stage. He didn't beat Clemson, but they were so close, and he proved the whole country that he can play with anybody. And, of course, that's quarterback Lamar Jackson from Louisville.
Yeah, Scott, this guy might be one of the most valuable players I've ever put eyes on in college football. Just the way he has the swagger about him. Everyone on his team, you could tell, if he's having a great game, the energy, the defense picks up, you see harder hits. He's just one of those players that everyone looks around.
That's my favorite picture. I was watching that game live, and it was against Syracuse, and the guy went low, and right by the goal line, he just said, I'll just jump over you.
Yeah, and it didn't hurt that he ran track in high school, too.
Probably a little bit of hurdles as well. Let's switch real quick to the pros. You got the Saints and the Panthers. Panthers are 1-4. I predict them to be 9-7. I might have gone low. They were 15-1 last year. They might not win more than 6 or 7. Who knows? But if Cam Newton comes back, we know they're a different team. Saints 1-3, one-game winning streak. You see Breeze, Newton. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I think this is a great matchup for the Saints. They're coming off a bye. Sean Payton has good history coming off.
Only lost one. That was last year,
exactly.
off a bye.
And we're going to be at home. You know the crowd knows that. I know Atlanta's a little bit on top of the division right now, but guess what? Tampa Bay, we're only a game behind. We get this win on Carolina, we'd jump 2 games ahead of them. We'd only have Tampa Bay and Atlanta in front of us. So I think this is a statement game for the season. I know it's early in the season. We're coming off the bye, but I think if you can put the Panthers away early in the season, 1-5, I think that really says about the character of your team.
Yeah, last year, but keep in mind, Falcons were 5-0 before the Saints beat them on Thursday night, and they lost 3 of their last 11 games. So there's precedent there. The Falcons do look good. I got to give them credit. As do you, Chase Brocato. Hey, I love talking sports with you. I know I had Eric Hill for a while, so cut us short a little bit, but I'll definitely bring you back. And by the way, I know you went last time. You said you enjoyed this restaurant. Did you go to the Metairie version, or did you go to the Warehouse District version?
The Warehouse one.
So, all right, you got Warehouse District where it's happening.
Yeah, it is.
And they're opening one in the CBD. They're going to have one across the river. So on my way, you adders can get them too. Hey, Chase Brocato, I appreciate you once again. One of the great guys. I love him. Hey, coming up, though, I've got a guy you listen to probably every night. He and T-Bob Hebert have a show called Double Coverage on WWL Radio from 8 to 11. Well, of course, his name is Christian Garrick, and he is a longtime sideline reporter for the New Orleans Saints as well. That's his nighttime, or his side job. We're going to talk Saints coming up and everything else in the New Orleans sporting world right here on Primetime Sports.
I'm Rick Edelman. Join me every week for the truth about money. I answer real questions for real people just like you. Questions about investments, taxes, buying houses, saving for college, planning for retirement, handling wills and trusts. I'll give you the solid, common sense advice you need to reach your financial goals. That's the truth about money with Rick Edelman, right here on this station.
Fridays at 11 p.m. on WLAE.
Hey, welcome back, Crescent City. And the beauty of live TV is you never know what's going to happen. And I just got a call from Christian Garrick. Well, he's got a family emergency that just came out. So prayers to him. Hope everything works out, Christian. But that leaves us more time to talk with the guy that was just here, Chase Brocato. We weren't done talking football anyway, so you're back, man.
Thanks for having me back.
My man's back for another segment. I wasn't through anyway, so let's just jump into some more stuff. One of the things I didn't get to that I've been dying to talk to you about is your opinion on Tom Brady. I mean, the guy is literally older than Drew Brees even, and that's old. And he comes back after missing, oh, by the way, didn't play hardly at all in preseason, barely. And he missed the last 4 games. He's been sunbathing nude over in France and other areas over there. He comes back and, oh, by the way, throws for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. So what are your thoughts on Tom Terrific?
Yeah, Scott, there can't be any other player that comes back and really just blows the doors off the NFL like Tom Brady. I mean, this guy, I know people are saying it's the Cleveland Browns defense. Of course, they're 0-5, but guess what?
I don't care who it is.
Right, it doesn't matter. They still have a guy named Joe Hayden that's one of the top corners in the league. And Tom Brady, what he does best, Scott, like Belichick, he finds the weakness. And once he realized that Martellus Bennett could not be covered, well, guess what? That's 3 touchdowns to Bennett.
I was going to put up a graphic, and I didn't get to it, but I'll just say it. Okay, when you look at career stuff, you got, right now, you've got guys named Peyton Manning and Brett Favre on, and that's a longevity a lot of times. I mean, I think most people, certainly my age around, would say, Joe Montana is the greatest quarterback, or at least one of them. If you're older than me, you might be saying Johnny Unitas. But when you look at it, it's all subjective. But when you look at the numbers, it's, like I said, Peyton and Favre all the way up there. And then Breeze is rapidly catching them. But right behind Breeze, And we got to remember, Manning sat out a full year. I mean, Brady sat out a full year. But right behind Breeze is a guy named Tom Brady who looks like these two guys are going to be breaking those records, and they'll probably be battling each other for the most all-time yards, most all-time touchdowns. When you look at Tom Brady and Drew Brees, and I'm going to start with Brady, where do you think they land in the big picture? Now, we all know that Brady's also got the Super Bowls. Brees has one. Brady's got multiple, and he's been in a couple other close ones that they barely lost. So when you look at the big picture, where Brady will probably end up, where do you think he's going to rank?
I think, Scott, he's got to be a top 3 quarterback of all time with Montana and Peyton Manning just because of what he's done in the postseason. I mean, you talk about a guy that teams are really, really petrified of playing. I'd say out of anyone in NFL history, Tom Brady is probably the guy that defensive coordinators get the biggest headache in the postseason, especially.
No, I mean, my goodness, are you kidding me? I mean, and the record is astounding. I mean, the amount of playoff wins, I know from the old days, they do have another round and all that, I mean, occasionally. But the fact is that he's been great. But I'm curious where you think Brees stands with all this, because he's an interesting. Down here, we love him, and, you know, obviously he's loved around the country, but he's not in Brady and Manning's class everywhere else.
Right, and I think, honestly, Scott, I think you can make an argument that Drew Brees is the second best regular season quarterback of all time.
Behind Peyton Manning.
Peyton
right.
Manning. Because the stats he's putting up, I mean, it's remarkable the consistency he has. He's right now, him and Phillip Rivers are the two guys, the Iron Man, that they've had the most starts consecutively.
And Eli's right there.
Right, Eli's right there.
Right.
So it just shows you that during the regular season, that Drew Brees can make anything happen with the defense. He doesn't have guys that Tom Brady has on the defense. He doesn't have that type of home field advantage that Foxborough has. But I think that Drew Brees has showed you, guess what? He doesn't need a Randy Moss. He doesn't need a Rob Gronkowski to put the guys and put the numbers up.
He's never had a Pro Bowl receiver. I mean, this year I think is his best receiving core. I know people will argue with me that, but Michael Thomas is showing you he's a stud. Obviously, Willie Snead is a ball-catching machine. Too bad he's been banged up the last couple of games. And then Brandon Cooks, who's kind of hit or miss, but that's a great tandem. He's never had a Pro Bowl receiver. So for what he's done is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And it just shows you that the system that Sean Payton puts Drew Brees in really magnifies to the skill position players that the Saints have.
Let's talk about some more stuff in the NFL right now. I want to get to this as well. What's going on in Dallas, and I know it's early, but 4-1 is still 4-1, and you've got a rookie quarterback that no one expected to play, and maybe not even play ever. Well, now he's looking like he's not going to lose this job. He's the guy that LSU knows well, Dak Prescott. He burned up LSU a couple years back in Tiger Stadium. But, man, how good has he looked? And then they also have the leading rusher who they expected to be really good in Ezekiel Elliott. Are you surprised or amazed at what they're doing right now?
No, I am amazed right now, Scott. But I'm going to be honest. I think the most valuable players on the entire team is obviously the offensive line.
Right.
And, I mean, let's be honest. Dak Prescott isn't throwing 50-yard bombs. He's dinking, dunking, and really making it easy for him with the offensive line. I mean, the guy doesn't even get touched back there.
No,
I mean,
me
or you could be back there.
And by the way, he's a powerful runner, too.
Right.
I mean, in today's league, I mean, you've seen Cam Newton get pummeled. So far, so good. He has a way of escaping the big hits. Hey, another big surprise, and I think we all have to be surprised. You lose your quarterback before the season, Teddy Bridgewater. You lose, some say, the greatest running back in NFL history. I'll put him in the top 5. I'm not going to give him 1, 2, or 3. But the Minnesota Vikings, this defense, I mean, has really become kind of the Denver Broncos of last year. Talk about what they've done, and how surprised are you here?
I mean, I think this defense, Scott, right now is playing the best football in the NFL, no doubt about it. And the reason why is you see that they have the 2 most athletic linebackers in the entire NFL. Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks, those 2 guys can cover any tight end or running back out of the flat. And guess what? If you can do that and shut down a screen game, then you have to make them throw deep. And then guess what? You have a Pro Bowl safety named Harrison Smith back there playing center field waiting for those long bombs.
Well, they're the only undefeated team left. Okay, last week I talked about it in the opening. They had 3 quarterbacks that were undefeated. Well, there's only 1 now. And the other 2, none of them were decided to be starters in their team till the week before. Carson Wentz obviously got the starting job with Philly when they traded Sam Bradford in Minnesota. Well, he was 4-0. Now he's 4-1. Maybe 3-1. I think they had a bye week. But the other guys just lost as well this past weekend. Well, that was the Broncos lost, but Simeon was out anyway. But Bradford much maligned. The guy was the Heisman Trophy winner, first pick of the draft, but injury prone his entire career. More of a punchline than anything else with the Rams and then the Eagles. Now he's showing you the Sam Bradford we thought, managing the game and not losing it for him.
Yeah, and I think, Scott, the offensive coordinator is putting Sam Bradford in a beautiful position.
Kind of like the Cowboys with Prescott.
Right, same way, where they're not making him force turnovers, where both those guys, guess what, 0 interceptions next to both of their names, which is incredible because Sam Bradford's thrown the ball actually 20 to 25 times a game, where Dak Prescott's around 15 to 18. But it just shows you that Mike Zimmer, this is one of the most underrated coaches in the entire NFL, and he's finally getting a name for himself.
Yeah, and I'm happy for him. He's one of the good guys. He's a hard-nosed coach, but he's fair. I like him a lot. Hey, I talked the last segment with you a lot about the upcoming matchups with some big games in college football, but I didn't get to really LSU with you, and I want to get your opinion on things. I know Bama fans, the ones I know well, they were happy that Les Miles was in there because they felt they could beat Les Miles. They beat him 5 times in a row. It's hard to believe that Les Miles at one time had a winning record against Saban early in Saban's Bama career. But not beating Bama and then some clock management issues obviously was his downfall. But Ed Orgeron's who I want to talk about. What do you think about this interim position tag? And do you think he might be the long-term answer? I just want your thoughts on the other side. Hey, take your Alabama shoes off. Yeah. For LSU purposes, who's the best coach for them?
I think Coach O right now is really showing that the players love him. He's a player's coach. It's showing you that the fire he brought out in that Missouri game. I mean, I've never seen play calls like that where, hey, let's throw the ball and then run it. Let's throw the ball and run it instead of pitch right. And it just shows you that all the players have a lot of confidence. And what's the scariest thing in sports? When you have the confidence of not just your coach, but all your other teammates. I think LSU is a very scary team going down into November and December.
Yeah, it's a tough situation with this Florida game. I mean, but it's one step at a time. Obviously, they have Southern Miss this weekend, and then it's Ole Miss, bye week, Alabama. You got, Texas A&M. It's tough, but it'll be interesting to see what he can do. But going forward, I mean, honestly, do you think the Tigers have a run possibly in them?
I really do, Scott. I think that if they can get through Ole Miss, which I think they match up great because the corners for LSU can cover the big receivers that Ole Miss throws out there. I just think that if you contain Chad Kelly, then guess what? You can really get it going.
On a sadder note, I want to mention something. Mike the Tiger is now in hospice, and this is sad because what a beautiful Tiger he's been for LSU for 9 years. Obviously, he has cancer. There's a shot I have here, all the spots he has. He had a lemon-sized cancer on his face. You see the radiation scar right there. It's sad. He's become a huge part of the LSU family. He's Mike the Sixth, and unfortunately, it looks like he's going to be passing very soon. But I know it's an animal, but animals to me are just as dear to us as humans are. I mean, I don't want to put them in the same category, but it's a sad moment. So, Mike the Tiger, rest in peace when it happens, my man. I hope you have a long, prosperous life in the afterlife. Hey, on another note, Chase, I want to thank you again. I appreciate you pinch hitting for Christian Garrett. Christian, I hope everything goes okay with you and your family's okay. But Christian will be back on another show. Definitely want to thank Eric Hill. What a superstar stud that guy was. Longtime NFL player, great businessman these days, but he was a huge part of that success. I mean, literally, I think they only played 11-game season. I think they lost like 5 or 6, 7 games in his entire time at LSU. Hey, Will Hill, what a tough show to produce. I appreciate you. Jay Smooth, getting it done. Kenny, can't thank you enough. The Redhead Tsunami. Don't forget Tay Morgan, who in town from Colorado. I want to thank everybody out there. Next week's going to be even bigger. I promise you that. Right here on Primetime Sports. If you want to check me out, you can go to @DScottAlexander on Twitter. And we'll be back next week. Also want to thank my sponsors for all the great things that they do. I got to thank them, man. Appreciate you. And you know who they are. You've seen the commercials. Go check their restaurants out. Go check the workout facility. Hey, go get your uniforms at that place. So I want to thank them all. Y'all have a great evening, New Orleans. We'll be back next week.